Good evening and welcome to the Granby Performing Arts production of Our Town. The show will begin momentarily. Please shut down all cell phones and electronic devices. There will be a brief intermission after Act 1. There will be concessions for sale at the concession booth. Please enjoy our show.
Most as you'll ever go is back where you used to know. If grown-ups could laugh this slow, whereas you watch the hours snow, years may go by. Years may go by. So hold on to your special friend. Here you'll need something to keep her in. Now you stay inside this foolish grin. Though any day your secret's in, then again years may go by. Years may go by. You saved your own special friend, 'cause here you need something to hide her in, and you stay inside that foolish grin. When every day now secrets in, and then again years may go by. Years may go by. Years may go by. Years may go by.
The name of this play is Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced by Leon Burke, and directed by Nikki Curry Huggard, with set design by Jen Spatcher. In it, you'll see Miss Cuff, Miss Abrahamson, Miss Hozak, Mr. Davis, Mr. Bryant, Mr. Drennan, and many more. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just north of the Massachusetts line. Latitude, 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude, 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act focuses in on a day in the life of our town. The date, May 7th, 1901. The time, just before dawn. The sky is beginning to show streaks of light in the east, beyond that mountain of ours. The morning star always gets wonderful bright just the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, guess I better show you how our town lays. Right along here's the main street. Back there's the railway station. Tracks go that way. Other side of the tracks is Polish Town and a couple of Canuck families. Back there's the Congregational Church. Across the street's the Presbyterian. The Methodist and the Unitarian are down that way. Baptist is down in the hollow by the river, and Catholic is down on the other side of the tracks. Back here's our town hall and post office combined, jails in the basement. Brian gave a speech from those very steps once. Right along here's a whole row of stores. Got hitching posts and horse blocks out the front of each one of them. First automobile's gonna come along in about 5 years from now. Owned by Banker Cartwright, our richest citizen. Lives in the big white house up on the hill. Right down there's the grocery store, and back here's Mr. Morgan's drugstore. Hardly a fella in town doesn't manage to look into those two stores at least once a day. Down there's the primary school. High school's a bit further on still. 8:45, mornings, noon times, and 3 o'clock afternoons. The whole town can hear the whooping and the hollering from those schoolyards. This here is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. Here's the back door. And out here is Mrs. Gibbs's garden. Got corn, peas, beans, hollyhock, heliotrope, and a whole lot of burdock. Back in these days, we used to get our local paper twice a week, the Grover's Corners Sentinel. And this is Editor Webb's house. Here's Mrs. Webb's garden, much the same as Mrs. Gibbs's, only got a lot of sunflowers too. And right here's a big butternut tree. Nice town. Know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable's ever come out of it, at least as far as we know. Earliest dates in the cemetery up on the hill are 1670s, 1680s. They're Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names as we've got around here now. Well, like I said, it's about dawn. Only lights on in town are in a cottage other side of the tracks where a Polish mother's just had twins. And in the Joe Crowell home where Joe Jr. is getting ready to deliver the paper. And down in the depot where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 545 for Boston. Of course, out in the country there have been lights on for a few hours now, what with milkins and whatnot. But townspeople, they sleep late. And so, another day's begun. Here comes Doc Gibbs walking down now, coming back from that baby case. Oh, and here's his wife coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. Mrs. Gibbs, well, she died first. Went to visit her daughter, Rebecca, married an insurance man out in Canton, Ohio. And she died there. Pneumonia. But they brought her body back here, and she's up in the cemetery now, what with the whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She used to be Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. Here in our town, we like to know the little facts about everybody. Oh, and here comes Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast as well. Oh, and Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street. He got that call for the babies at 1:30 in the morning. Oh, and here comes Joe Crowell delivering the paper.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc? Nah, just a pair of twins over in Polish Town.
You want your paper now?
Yeah, I'll take it. Anything happened in the news since Wednesday?
Nothing much, except in my teacher, Miss Foster, is getting married down in Concord next Wednesday.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, it ain't none of my business, but I think if somebody sets out to be a teacher, they ought to stay one.
How's your knee, Ben, Joe?
Not too bad. I hardly think about it at all. Only, like you said, it lets me know when it's gonna rain.
Is it gonna rain?
No, sir.
You ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Want to tell you something about this boy, Joe Crowell here. Joe was always awful bright. Graduated, top of his class from our local high school. Landed him a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated top of his class there, too. It was all written up in the Boston papers at the time. Gonna be a great engineer. But then the war broke out, and he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Giddy up, Bessie.
Oh, and here comes old Howie Newsom, delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody sick?
Nah, just a pair of twins over at Miss Goroslawski's.
Twins, huh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Think it's gonna rain, Howie?
No. Fine day. Come on, Bessie.
How's she been, Howie?
Good. Going on 17 now. She's been all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockharts stopped taking their quart of milk every Sunday. Wants to stop by just the same. She keeps scolding me the whole trip.
Good morning, Howie.
Good morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Your husband's just coming down the street now.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yes, something went wrong with the separator. I'm not sure what it was. Doc?
Howie.
Thank you, Howie. Children, time to get up.
Come on, Bessie.
Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy's kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
I ought to be able to catch some sleep. Miss Wentworth's coming over at 11. My stomach ain't what it ought to be.
Well, all told, you won't get more than 3 hours sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's going to become of you. I do wish I could get you to go away someplace and take a real rest. I think it would do you good.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to George. It seems like something's come over him. I can't get him to do anything for me. I can't even get him to cut me some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George? Emily, you'll be late for school.
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa.
Don't you hear your mother calling you? Reckon I'll go catch 40 winks.
Wally, Emily, you're gonna be late. Wally, you wash yourself good or I will come up there and do it myself.
Ma, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his sleep. I washed and ironed the blue gingham for you, special.
Ma, I hate that dress.
Hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up there and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
We got a factory in town. Hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it, and it brings them a fortune.
Now, children, I won't have it. Breakfast is good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling down like wolves. It'll stunt your growth. That's a fact. Put your book away, Wally.
Ma, by 10 o'clock I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthier than bright.
But I'm both, Mama. You know that. I'm the smartest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too. I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I don't know how you spend it all.
Oh, Ma, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
I've been saving it up gradual.
Well, dear, I think it's a good idea to spend some every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Mama, that's first bell.
Gotta hurry.
I don't want any more.
Walk, but you don't have to run. Pull your pants up by the knee, Wally, and stand up straight, Emily.
Now, tell Miss Foster I sent her my best congratulations. Can you remember that?
Yes, Ma.
Oh, pick up your feet, Rebecca. You look very nice. Here, chick, chick, chick. Oh, go away, you. Go away. Here, chick, chick, chick. You're not one of mine. Where'd you come from? Oh, fight, fight, fight. That's all you do. Oh, hush up. No one's going to hurt you. Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
I still have that tickling feeling in my throat. I asked Charles if I should go to choir practice today. Wouldn't it be any use?
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but somehow I can't stay on key. While I'm resting myself, I decided to string these beans.
Well, here, let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I decided to put up 40 quarts, even if it kills me. The children say they hate them, but I've noticed they get them down all winter.
Myrtle, I've got to tell you something, because if I don't tell someone, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Did one of those second-hand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my parlor, and next thing you know, he's offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs!
He did. That old thing, why, it was so big I didn't know where I'd put it. I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. Oh, you know, Myrtle, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. It sounds silly, I suppose, but for years I've been promising myself that if we ever had the chance.
How does the doctor feel about it?
Well, I did beat around the bush a little. I told him that if we ever got a legacy, that's how I put it, I'd make him take me.
What do you say?
Oh, you know him. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he says, might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing around Europe. Better let well enough alone. Every 2 years, we take a trip to the battlefields of the Civil War, and that's enough adventure for anybody, he says.
Well, we all know Dr. Webb just admires Dr. Gibbs and the Civil War. Mr. Webb has a good mind to move from Napoleon to the Civil War. Only Dr. Gibbs, the only expert, makes him despair.
Oh, well, it's a fact. The doctor is never so happy as when he's at Antietam or Gettysburg. Myrtle, the times I've walked those hills, pacing out every bush like we were going to buy it.
Well, if that second-hand man's serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it, and you go see Paris. Just keep dropping hints every once in a while. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, I'm sorry I mentioned it. It just seems that once in a person's life, before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk English and don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now, I think it's important that we get to know a bit more about the town. Sort of a scientific account, you might say. That being the case, I've asked Professor Willard here of our state university. Professor, has anybody seen Professor Willard? Aha! May I introduce to you Professor Willard of our state university. A few brief notes, if you could, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Grover's Corners, let me see. Ah, yes. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. It's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that here. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestiges of Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings, but that's all more recent, 200, 300 million years old. Some very unique fossils have been found here at Grover's Corners. Interesting fossils, I may say, 2 miles out at Silas Peckham's cow pasture. These fossils can be viewed at any time in the museum, they can be viewed at the museum at any time. Any reasonable time, that is. Shall I read some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological situation, mean precipitation, etc.?
No, unfortunately, I don't think we have time for that. Perhaps some notes on the history of man here.
Yes. Anthropological data. Early Amerindian stock. Cotahatchee tribes. No evidence before the 10th century of this era. Now entirely disappeared. Traces in 3 families. Since then, some Slav and Mediterranean population has permeated into...
And the population, Professor Willard?
At the moment, 2,640.
Just a moment.
Oh, indeed. The current population is 2,642. The postal district brings in another 507, making a grand total of 3,149. Mortality and birth rates, constant. By McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor. We're all very much obliged, I'm sure.
Not at all, not at all.
Now for the political and social report. Editor Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb.
He'll be out in a moment. He cut himself while he was eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everyone's waiting.
Mr. Webb is the publisher and editor of the Grover's Corners Sentinel. That's a local paper, you know.
Well, I don't have to tell you here that we're run by a board of selectmen. All males vote at age 21, women vote indirect. We're mainly lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men, around 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republican, 6% Democrat, 4% Socialist, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestant, 12% Catholic, rest indifferent.
Any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, better behaved than most, probably a lot duller. But our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school settle down right here, even if they've been off to college.
Well, let's open it up to the audience. Do any of you have any questions you'd like to ask Mr. Webb?
Well, ma'am, I don't know what you'd call much. Saturday nights, the farm hands head on down to Ellery Greenoff's stable and holler some. We got one or two town drunks, but they're always getting remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, I'd say liquor ain't a problem in the home here, except for the medicine chest. Right good for a snake bite, always was.
Excuse me? Could you come forward, please, so that we can all hear you?
Well, everyone is something terrible. Seems like most people spend their time thinking about who's rich and who's poor. Well, I don't know. I guess we're all just searching for a way that the diligent and sensible can rise to the top and the lazy and quarrelsome can, well, sink to the bottom. Meanwhile, we help those that can't help themselves, and those that can, well, we leave them alone. Are there any other questions? Well, ma'am, there's not much culture, not in the way that you mean, though I guess now is the time to tell you there are a lot of pleasures of a kind. I mean, there are some girls who play piano at the high school commencement ceremony, but they ain't like it. But we like the sun coming up over the mountains. We all pay a great deal to the birds. Yes, we do pay a lot of attention to them, and to the changing of the seasons. Yes, everybody knows them. But that's about as far as we go. Robinson Crusoe and the Bible and Handel's Largo and Whistler's Mother, but that's about as far as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Well, while we've been talking, a few hours have gone by. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 residents of Grover's Corners have had their dinners, and all the dishes have been washed. Doc Gibbs is down in his office, hitting people's knees and making them say, ah. Mr. Webb is down there, mowing his lawn. 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir, it's later than I thought. Here come the children coming home from school now.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promised.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
Oh, Papa, you're terrible. 1 minute, you tell me to stand up straight, and the next minute, you're calling me names. I just don't listen to you.
Wow, haven't been kissed by such a great lady before.
Oh, pardon me, Mrs. Forrest.
Go play in the fields, young man. You got no right playing baseball on Main Street.
I'm awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Hello, George.
You made a fine speech in class today.
Well, thank you. I was really ready to make a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corker made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked awfully long on both of them.
You know, Emily, it's funny. When I'm up late doing my homework, I can just see you in your room, your head up late.
Well, can you?
You sure do stick to it, Emily. I don't see how a person could sit still for that long. I guess you like school.
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
Yeah.
I just think of it as something you have to go through.
You know, Emily, we ought to work out some kind of telegraph from your window to mine. So late nights when I'm up late stuck on some of those algebra problems, you can give me a few hints. I don't mean the answers, Emily. Just a few hints.
Well, I think hints are allowed. So, George, if you ever get stuck, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
Gee, thanks, Emily. You're just naturally bright, I guess.
Oh, I just figure that's the way a person's born.
Yeah. But, you see, I want to be a farmer on my Uncle Luke's farm, and he says that if I put in the work, then eventually I can just have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah, I do. Well, I better be getting down to the fields. Nice talking to you. Good afternoon, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come here and help me string these beans for the winter. George Gibbs had himself a real conversation, didn't he? Why, he's all grown up. How old is he?
I don't know.
Let's see. He must be about 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today, and I was very good.
You must recite it to your father during supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm going to make speeches all my life. Mama, are these big enough?
Try to make them a little bit bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question? Serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Of course you are. All my children have naturally good features. I'd be ashamed if they didn't.
Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I've already told you, yes. You have a natural pretty face. I never heard such foolishness.
Mama, he never tells the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Yes. If I do say it, I was the prettiest girl in town, right next to Mame Cartwright.
Well, Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody? To get anybody interested in me?
Now, Emily, you make me tired. You're pretty for all natural purposes. Now, that's enough of that. Come along and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, well, I think that now is a good time to tell you that Cartwright Interests have begun building a new bank here in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. But, well, the reason I bring it up is because they've asked a friend of mine what they think they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, we put in a copy of the New York Times and Mr. Webb's Sentinel. Reason we're interested in that kind of thing is because we got a couple of scientific fellas to paint it all up in a glue, a silicate glue that'll keep it good for 1,000, 2,000 years. So, we've put in a copy of the Bible and the United States Constitution and a copy of all of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you all think? What do you think we should put in there? You know, ancient Babylon once had 2 million people living in it. And every night they came home and had supper, and their father came home late from work, and smoke went up the chimney. Just like here. But all we know about them are the names of some kings and some copies of wheat contracts and contracts for the selling of slaves. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about them come from the joking poems and the comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So, I've decided I'm going to put a copy of this play in the cornerstone so that people 1,000 years from now can know a bit more about us, more than the Treaty of Versailles and the Lindenberg flight anyway. See what I mean? So, people 1,000 years from now, this is the way we were. This is the way we were in the provinces north of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up and our living and our marrying and our dying. This is the way we were. Well, good deal of time's gone by. It's evening. You can hear the choir singing down in the congregational church. All the children are at home doing their schoolwork. The day's running down like a tired clock.
Now, remember, music brought into the world to bring pleasure. Softer, softer. Now get that music out of your heads. It's only good when it's played loud. Leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them, even if you wanted to. Again.
Psst, Emily.
Hello, George.
Hello.
My, isn't the moonlight terrible? I can barely work at all.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Which?
The third.
Why, yes, George. It's the easiest one of them all.
I don't see it. Can you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer is in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Oh, wallpaper. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And that choir practice going on? I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Cotton Cook. Can you hear it?
Well, what do you know?
Well, I better get back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
Before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come to Fred Hirsch's wedding Tuesday afternoon? Raise your hands. Nice. That'll be right nice. We'll do the same music we did for Jane Trowbridge's last month. Art thou weary? Art thou languid? It's a question, ladies. Make it talk. Again.
George, will you come down a minute?
Yes, Pa.
Make yourself comfortable, George. George, how old are you?
Why, I'm 16, almost 17.
What are you planning to do after school?
Oh, well, you know. I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
You're telling me you'll be willing to wake up early every morning, hoe and hay all day, take care of the farm, the chickens and the stock and all the other animals?
Why, of course I would. What do you mean?
Well, George, I was in my office today and I heard a funny sound. What do you think it was? It was your mother outside chopping the wood. Here we see your mother waking up early every morning, cooking, cleaning all day, making meals for you too. Yet she still has to go outside and chop the wood. Figured she just got tired of asking you. Figured it'd be easier for her to do it herself. But you eat the meals she makes for you and wear the clothes she keeps nice for you, and then run off and play baseball like she's some, I don't know, some hired girl we keep around but don't like very much. Son, I knew all I had to do was bring it to your attention. Here's a handkerchief. George, raising your pay by 25 cents. Not because you're going to chop the wood for your mother. That's a gift you give her. But because you're older, and I imagine you have more than enough to spend it on.
Thanks, Pa.
Let's see. Tomorrow's your payday. You can count on it. Where is your mother? Choir practice has never run this late before.
Well, it's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't know why she's still in that old choir. She hasn't any more of a voice than an old crow. Ain't it about time you retired?
Yes, Pa.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mrs. Foster. Good night, Irma. I'll tell Mr. Webb. I know he won't put that in the paper.
My, it's late. Oh, Myrtle, would you look at that moon? Potato weather for sure.
I didn't want to say anything with those others around, but now that we're alone, really, it's the worst scandal I've ever seen in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But Julia, to have the organist of the church drink and drunk year after year, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Simon Stimson, and we all know the trouble he's been through, and Dr. Ferguson knows too. And as long as Dr. Ferguson keeps him on there in his job, the only thing the rest of us can do is just not to notice it.
Not to notice it, but it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It is getting better. I've been at choir practice twice as long as you have, and it hasn't come up as often. My, I would hate to go to bed on a night like this. I must get going. The children will be up all hours. Good night, Luella.
Good night.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
Oh, it's bright as day. I can see Mr. Soames scowling at the window now. Oh, you'd think we'd been at a dance the way these menfolk carry on.
Well, we had a real nice time.
You're late enough.
Why, Frank, it ain't any later than usual.
And you were out at the corner gossiping with a lot of hens.
Now, Frank, don't be such a grouch. Come out and smell the heliotrope in the moonlight. There. Isn't that better? Now, what did you do all that time I was away?
Oh, I sat and read, as usual. What were the girls gossiping about?
Well, believe me, Frank, there is plenty to gossip about.
Simon Stimson far gone again.
The worst I've ever seen him. Now, Frank, how will that end? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I know Mr. Stimson better than most. And I also know some people just ain't cut out for small-town life. There's nothing we can do but sit back and watch. We don't know how that'll end. Come, let's get inside.
No, not yet. Frank, I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about, Julia?
Well, I see that it's my duty to make sure you have plans for a real rest and change. And if I get that legacy, I'm going to insist on it.
Julia, there's no point in going over this again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come, let's get inside. You'll catch cold before you know. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. Reckon you'll have your wood chopped for a while at least. No. Start getting upstairs.
Dear, always seems like there's so much to pick up. You know, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door every evening. All those folks that side of town do.
That's the problem with people around here. They're all getting citified. They've nothing fit to burgle, and they all know it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this ladder. You're always ruining everything.
Well, let me look just a moment.
Go to your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there. George, do you know what I think? Do you? I think maybe the moon's getting near, and soon there'll be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon was getting nearer and nearer, then people who sit up all night with telescopes would see it first, and then it'd be all in the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and the other half of the world?
Well, probably is.
"9:30 in Grover's Corners. Most everyone's asleep. No, there's Constable Warren checking a few doors. Oh, and there's Mr. Webb after putting his newspaper to bed.
Good evening, Bill.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yep.
Everything settled down for the night?
Yep. All but Simon Stimson. You know, I saw him rolling around here late last night. Wife moved out to hunt for him, so I looked the other way. Oh, there he is now.
Good evening, Simon. Town seems to have settled down for the night now. Good evening, Simon. Yes, the town seems to have settled down for the night now. Reckon we should do the same. Mind if I walk a ways with you? Well, good night.
I don't know how well that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
Oh, well, you know Simon. He's had a peck of trouble one thing after another. Oh, Bill, if you catch my boy smoking cigarettes, can you give him a talking to? He thinks high of you.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. No more than 2 or 3 a year.
I hope not. Well, good night, Bill. Myrtle, is that you up there?
No, Papa, it's me.
Emily, what are you doing out of bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet. The moonlight is so wonderful, and the smell of Miss Gibbs's heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Have any troubles, do you?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, you enjoy yourself. Don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Crawford got when she was sick. Her minister wrote her a letter. And on the envelope, the address is like this. It said, Jane Crawford, Crawford Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
What's funny about that?
But listen, it's not finished. United States of America, continent of North America, Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it, just the same.
Well, what do you know?
That's the end of the first act, folks. You can get up now and stretch your legs. It's been 3 years. Yes, the sun has risen in the east over 1,000 times. The summers and winters have cracked the mountains, and the rain has brought down some of the dirt. Some babies who weren't even born last time we talked have begun talking regular sentences. And some people who thought they were awful spry and young have found they can't bound up a flight of stairs like they used to without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. In that time, nature's been pushing and contriving in some other ways, too. A number of young people have jumped up and gotten married. Yeah, the mountains are a few fractions of an inch shorter. Millions of gallons of water have gone under the mill, and here or there, a new home has popped up under a roof. Most everyone in the world gets married. You know what I mean? Hardly a person in the world climbs into their graves married. The first act was called Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. I don't think I need to tell you what the third act's going to be about. So, it's 3 years later. It's 1904. It's July 9th, right after high school commencement. That's the time a number of young people jump up and get married. Yes, seems after they finished their final examinations on solid geometry and Cicero's ornations, they see themselves fit to be married. So, it's just about dawn. Only this time, it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. There's Mrs. Gibbs's garden, and there's Mrs. Webbs's, drenched. All them bean poles and pea vines, drenched. All along Main Street, the wind was blowing like curtains. Oh, there's the 5:45 for Boston. And there's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast. Now, I don't have to tell this to the ladies in my audience, but these two women you see before you, why, they cooked 3 meals a day. One for 20 years, the other for 40. And still, they found time to clean the house and clean the clothes and raise 2 children and never a summer vacation and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of them Middle West philosophers said. You gotta love life to have life, and you gotta have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Come on, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
Oh, and there's Howie Newsom delivering the milk. And here's Cy Crowell picking up where his brother left off.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the paper I ought to know?
Nothing much, except Grover's Corner's losing the best baseball player we ever had, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run bases, too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player.
I don't see how someone could give something like that up just to go get married. Do you, Howie?
Couldn't tell you, Cy. I never had any talent that way. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Howie.
You're up early.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to stop a flood. River's been rousing all week.
Cy here is all out of sorts about George Gibbs is retiring from baseball.
You know, we had a ball player like that back in the day, back in 1884. Name of Hank Todd. You know what? He went up to Maine to become a parson. Damn shame. How's the weather looking?
Oh, I think it'll clear up soon. Rained so hard earlier.
Good morning, Howie. Do you think it'll rain again today?
No, it'll clear up soon.
Certainly hope it will.
How much today, Mrs. Gibbs?
Well, Howie, I'm going to have a house full of relations. Looks to me like I'll need 3 milk and 2 a cream.
3 a milk and 2 a cream. Mrs. Newsom told me to tell you, we hope they'll both be very happy, Mrs. Gibbs. I know they will be.
Well, tell your wife I hope she gets there to the wedding.
Oh, yes, we'll be there if we can. Good morning, Mrs. Webb.
Good morning, Mr. Newson. I told you 4 quarts, but I do hope you can spare me another.
Of course, and the 2 a cream.
Will it rain, Mr. Newson?
Well, no, I was just telling Mrs. Gibbs. I think it'll clear up sooner or later.
Thank you, Mr. Newson. And thank Mrs. Newson, and we count on seeing you at the wedding.
Oh, yes, we'll be there if we can.
You're losing one of your chicks.
Oh, Frank Gibbs, don't say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
The groom's upstairs shaving himself, looking in the mirror and singing like he's happy to leave us. I hear him say, "I do" every now and then. Doesn't sound too convincing to me.
Frank, I don't know how he'll get on. I've arranged his clothes and seen to it he's put warm things on. Oh, Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things and he'll catch his death of cold within a week.
Julia, I was remembering our wedding morning.
Oh, don't start that.
I was the scaredest young fella in all of New Hampshire. Then I saw you coming down the aisle. Prettiest girl I'd ever seen. Only problem was, I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
Well, how do you think I felt, Frank? Weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces. That's what they are. Here, I've made you something.
What, Julia Hershey? French toast.
Well, tain't hard to make and had to do something.
How'd you sleep, Julia?
Well, I heard quite a few of the hours struck off.
Yes. I get a shock every time I think of George going off to be a family man. That great gangling thing. Julia, I tell you, relationship between father and son is the most awkwardest, darndest.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic either, let me tell you.
Julia, you know what I was afraid of when I married you?
Oh, go along with you.
I was afraid we'd run out of things to talk about, that we'd spend our meals in silence. But here it's been, 20 years, without any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather. Tain't very choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No, I didn't. Only day this year she hasn't been running about managing everyone's business. I think she might be in her room, probably crying.
Oh, Lord's sakes, this has got to stop. Rebecca? George, come downstairs and get your breakfast.
Morning, everyone. Only 5 hours to live.
Oh, where do you think you're going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
It is raining torrents. Put your overshoes on. You will not leave this house without you're prepared for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all weathers, but while you're in my house, you'll live wisely. Thank you. Perhaps Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, at least take a cup of coffee first.
Be back in a minute. Morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a moment out that wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Oh, well, why not?
George, you know as well as I do, the groom can't see his bride on his wedding day, not until he sees her in church.
Oh, that's just superstition. Oh, good morning, Mr. Webb.
Morning, George.
Mr. Webb, do you believe in that superstition?
Well, George, there's a lot of common sense in some superstitions.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want me the first to fall into custom.
So, how is Emily?
I haven't heard a sound out of her. I guess she's still asleep.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder. We were up all night sewing and packing. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. You are gonna sit right here with Mr. Webb, and you are going to drink this cup of coffee, and I'll go upstairs and make sure she does not come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be long.
Well, George, how are you?
Fine. I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, George, on their wedding day, a girl's mind is apt to be full of, well, clothes in one thing or another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that.
A girl's apt to be might nervous on her wedding day, George.
I wish a fella could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. But it hasn't been any use. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure they're not side in a mighty public way.
But you do believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Yes, oh yes, don't you misunderstand me, George. Marriage is a wonderful thing, and don't you forget that.
Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, I had taken a little time to get settled after college, but Mrs. Webb was about Emily's age. But, age has little to do with it, George, not as much as other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, nothing, George, I was just thinking about what my father said to me when I got married. Charles, he said, start out early showing her who's boss. Give her instructions, even if it doesn't make any sense. And if there's anything about your wife that annoys you, her conversation or anything, just stand up and leave, and I'll make it clear to her. And above all, to never, and I mean never, let your wife know how much money you have.
Mr. Webb, I don't think I could ever...
So I took the opposite of my father's advice, and I've been happier ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George, never to take advice from others on personal matters. Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been too fond, but I thought
A book
that...
found its way onto my desk on the Philo system of raising chickens. You know, I thought I'd start out small. A pen in the backyard. I'd even thought of getting an incubator in the basement, just to...
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you two men would talk about things worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to talk to the boy about personal matters, I'll just go upstairs and leave you two alone.
George, Emily has to come down and eat her breakfast too. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Myrtle, did anyone ever tell you about that older superstition?
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the caveman times, no man should ever see his father-in-law on the day of his wedding, and let you remember that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I think it's important that we get to know how all this got started. This wedding. This plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm always interested in how big things like that begin. You know how it is. You're 21 or 22 and you make some decisions, then whoosh, you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and this white-haired lady by your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? Well, in just a minute, George and Emily are going to share with you the conversation they had when they first knew that they were meant for each other. But before they do, I want you all to try to remember a time when you were very young. Or, better than that, when you were first in love. You're like a person sleepwalking, and you don't quite know what street you're on, and you don't quite hear who's talking to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Could you remember that? Please? Well, just a minute. George and Emily are going to come walking down Main Street. Now, George has just been elected president of the junior class. And as it's June, that means he's going to be president of the senior class all next year. And Emily has just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Well, here they come now.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home. Goodbye. Oh, Ernstine! Ernstine, can you come over tonight and do Latin? Oh, isn't that Cicero just the worst thing? Well, tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Can I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Why, thank you. It isn't far.
Say, Bob, if I'm a little late, start without me, and give Herb some long high ones. I'm awfully glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you ask, I might as well come right out and say it. Goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Oh, goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What was it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the past year, George. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot, and I used to watch you as you did everything because we'd been friends for so long. But then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore. Not even to your own family you did it. And George, it's a fact. You've gotten awful stuck up and conceited, and all the girls say so. They might not say it to your face, but it's what they say about you behind your back. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, but I can't be sorry that I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's not too hard for a person to have faults fall into their character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect. and I think he should be.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father's perfect. And as far as I can see, your father is too. There isn't a reason on earth why you shouldn't be.
Well, I see it as the other way around. That men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. It's not as easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man, because we girls are more nervous. Now, I'm sorry I said all that about you, George. I don't know what made me say it. No, now I can see it's not the truth at all, and it isn't that important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go?
Well, thank you. I would.
Hello, Stu. How are you? Oh, good afternoon, Mrs. Slocum.
Why, hello, George. Hello, Emily. Emily Webb, what you been crying about?
She just had an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She almost got run over by that hardware store wagon. Everyone says Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Here, Emily, you take a drink. I swear, you gotta be careful when you cross the roads these days. Gets crazier every year. What can I get you?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
No. Emily, have an ice cream soda with me. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mr. Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, there are 125 horses in Grover's Corners right as I'm talking to you. State inspector was in here yesterday. And now they're bringing in these fancy automobiles. I swear. Easiest thing to do is just stay home. Why, I can remember when a dog could go out and lay down in the middle of Main Street and nothing had come along to bother him. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Enjoy them. Oh, Mrs. Glenn, what can I do for you?
George, they're so expensive.
No. You don't think about that. We're celebrating our election. And do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told to me.
George, please don't think of that. I don't know why.
No. Emily, you stick to it. And I'm going to make a change. You bet I'm going to make a change. And, Emily, could I ask you a favor?
What?
When I go away to state agricultural school, will you write me a letter once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It certainly seems that being gone for so long, maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all of New Hampshire, but I think it's a very nice town.
The day wouldn't go by where I wouldn't want to know everything that goes on here. I know that's the truth, Emily.
Well, then I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agricultural school, to be a good farmer. And most of them say it's just a waste of time. You can get all those things out of pamphlets the government sends out. And Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about ready for me to start taking over on his farm. Tomorrow, if I could.
My.
And like you say, being gone all that time. Gosh, I couldn't imagine anything like that happening to me. Emily, I feel as though you're as good of a friend as I've got. I don't need to go to other towns and meet other people. I bet new people are never better than old ones. I'm sure they're never.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go off and learn all about that cattle judging and soil and those things. Of course, I don't know.
Emily, I'm going to make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Emily, I'm glad you spoke to me about that fault in my character. What you said was right, but there was one thing missing. And for a year you said I wasn't noticing people. But you, for instance, why you said you were watching me as I did everything. Well, I was doing the same by you all this time. I always made sure where you were sitting and who you were with. And for 3 days now, I've been trying to walk home with you. But something's always got in the way. Like yesterday, I was standing over against the wall, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How was I supposed to know that? Why, I thought...
Emily, I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to go to agricultural school. I feel as though once you found a person who you're fond of, and who's fond of you too, and interested in your character, well, I feel that's just as important as college, maybe even more so.
I think it's awfully important too.
Emily?
Yes, George?
If I do improve and make a big change, would you be, could you be?
I am now. I always have been.
I guess this is a pretty important talk we've been having.
Yes, yes.
Wait a minute, and I'll walk you home. Mr. Morgan, I'll have to go home and get the money to pay you for this. It'll only take a minute, I swear.
What, George Gibbs? Are you telling me?
Yes, but I had my reasons. Look, here's my silver pocket watch to keep until I come back with the money.
Keep your watch, George. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you 10 years, George, and not a day over. You feeling better, Emily?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Well, now we're ready to get on with the wedding. There's an awful lot that goes on at a wedding. There's an awful lot that you can say about a wedding. Of course, we can't fit it all into one wedding, and especially not one in Grover's Corners, where they're awful, plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. This is a good wedding. But even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way deep down, and we figured that ought to be in our play, too. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. It's like Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago. People were made to live 2 by 2. Now, the most important player in this wedding isn't on the stage at all, and you all know who that is. It's like what one of them European fellas said. Every child born into this world is nature's attempt to make a perfect human being. Now, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for some time now, so we all know that she's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality, too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And, of course, we can't forget about all the other visitors at this wedding. The ancestors. Millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2 also. Millions of them. Well, that's all my sermon. It wasn't very long, anyway.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It
came over to me during breakfast this morning. There was Emily eating her breakfast, as she's done for 17 years, and now she's going to eat at someone else's house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, she suddenly said, "I can't eat another mouthful," and she put her head down. And she cried. Oh, I just gotta say it. There's something cruel sending our girls out into marriage this way. I do hope her girlfriends told her a thing or two. Yes, it's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I came as blind as a bat myself. The whole world is wrong. There they come.
Hey, George, don't look so innocent. We know what you're thinking. Go get him, big boy!
All right, that's enough of that. There used to be a lot more of that kind of thing in weddings in the old days. Rome, and later. We're more civilized now, so they say.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow up. Why is everyone pushing me so?
George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me.
George, you're a man now.
No, Ma, for the last time, all I wanted to do was be a fellow to...
George! George, if anyone should hear you, I'm ashamed of you.
What? Where's Emily?
George, you gave me such a turn.
Oh, cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Ma, you save Thursday nights. Me and Emily are coming over every Thursday night. You can count on it. Oh, come on, Ma. What are you crying for? We got to get ready for this.
I've never felt more alone in my whole life. And George, over there looking so... I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa!
Emily, what's the matter?
Papa, I don't want to get married.
Emily, just calm down. You're nervous.
But Papa, why can't I just stay for a while as I am? Let's go away.
Now, don't get upset. Just stop and think a minute.
But Papa, don't you remember? All the time, you used to say all the time that I was your girl. Now there must be lots of places we can go. I'll work for you. I can keep the house.
Shh, Emily, you mustn't think these things. You're just nervous. George, can you come a minute here, son? George is a fine fellow. You're marrying the best in the world.
But Papa...
George, Emily is my only daughter. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to. Emily, I want to try. I need you, Emily. I love you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
Emily, I want to try.
And I mean forever, George. Do you hear me? Forever and ever.
Come now. They're waiting for us. Now that we know everything's all right.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife?
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I've ever seen. I just love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a beautiful bride?
I do.
And do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband?
Don't know when I've been to such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. I don't know why, but I always cry. I just like seeing young people happy. I just think it's lovely.
I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. And Mary Zen, millions of them.
Okay, we'll change right now.
The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford. first rheumatism, the grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. 1 in 1,000 times it's interesting.
I've never been to such a lovely wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. It's like I always say, happiness, that's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
It's been 9 years, friends. Summer, 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers coming into town in Fords. Most everyone locks their houses now at night. Haven't had any burglars yet, but everybody's heard of them. Now, this is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop. Lots of sky, lots of clouds, often lots of sun and moon and stars. You go up there on a good day and you can see range on range of hills. Awful blue they are, up by Lake Sunapee and Lake Winnipesaukee. And if you got a glass, you can see Mount Washington and the White Mountains. And of course, our favorite mountain, Mount Manhattan, and all the towns that surround it. Jaffrey and East Jaffrey and Petersburg and Dublin, and way down there is Grover's Corners. Yeah, awful pretty up here, what with all the mountain laurel and lilac. I often wonder why people would want to be buried up in New York or Boston when you could choose to be buried here in beautiful New Hampshire. Over here are the old stones, 1670s, 1680s. Summer folks like to come around and laugh at the funny names on the tombstones that don't do no harm. Some sciencey folk come around, paid by city people who want to make sure they're the daughters of the American Revolution and the Mayflower. That don't do much harm either, I suppose. Whenever you come near the human race, there's layer upon layer of nonsense. Back here are the Civil War veterans, brave men who gave their lives fighting for the Union. They had a notion that the states ought to be kept together, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they had was a name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and they died over it. Over here are the new stones. Here's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs, and the church organist, Simon Stimson. Oh, and Mrs. Soames, who loved the wedding so. Oh, you remember? And here's Wally, Editor Webb's boy. His appendix burst. scouting trip up to Crawford Notch. Yeah. An awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief have brought their relatives up that hill. But you know how it is. Time and sunny days and rainy days and snow. And eventually we're all just glad that they're up here in a good place. And we'll be coming up there ourselves when our fit's over. Now, there are a lot of things that we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. And it ain't names, and it ain't houses, and it ain't the earth, and it ain't even the stars. But we all know deep down in our bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years. Yet, you'd be surprised how often people are still losing hold of it. There's something way down deep that's eternal in every human being. Well, you all know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in living people for very long. Gradually, they lose hold of the earth and the ambitions they had and the pleasures they had and the things they suffered and the people they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. That's the way I put it. Weaned away. And they stay up here while the earth part of them burns away, burns out. They're waiting for something. They're waiting for something great. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part of them to come out clear? Now, some of the things they're going to say might upset you, but that's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things just sort of grow pale around here. And what's left when memory's gone? And your identity, Mrs. Smith? Well, here are some living people. There's Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, supervising a fresh-made grave. And here's a Grover's Corners boy who left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes alive, but of course you are. I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Sam.
Yes, I've been gone almost 12 years now. I went out west to become a businessman in Buffalo, and I was back in the east on business when I got the news. So I did some combining of things, and here I am. You look well.
Yes, well, can't complain. Very sad, our journey here today, Samuel.
Yes.
I always say I hate supervising when it's a young one. I left my son supervising back at the home. They should be here any minute now.
Why, that's old Farmer McCarty. I used to do chores for him after school. He had the lumbago.
Yes, we lost him a number of years ago now.
And that's my Aunt Julia. I'd forgotten that she... Of course.
Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2-3 years ago, around this time of year, and today's another bad blow for him, too.
That's my sister Carrie's boy, Sam Craig.
I always hate it when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much?
Not usual, mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
Doesn't sound like Aunt Julia. There aren't many of those Hersey sisters left. Now let me see. I wanted to see my fathers and mothers.
They'd be over there with the Craigs, Avenue F.
Why, this was Simon Stimson, the organist at the church. Drank a lot, we used to say.
No one was supposed to know about it. Went through a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know?
Did he?
No one was supposed to know about that, neither. He hung himself in the attic, and he chose his own epitaph there, see?
What does it mean? It's just a bunch of musical notes.
Don't ask me, but it was all read up in the Boston papers when it happened. You'll excuse me, I see they're coming now.
Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Yes, don't you remember the legacy you left us? It was over $350.
Yes. Yes, of course.
Well, there's a patent device on the drinking fountain so that it never sinks below a certain mark that they have there. It's fine. Won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear, not very much.
They're sort of shut up in these little boxes. It seems as though I knew them last 1,000 years ago. My boy is spending the day at Miss Carter's. Mr. Carter, my boy, is spending the day at your house.
Is he?
Yes, he loves it there. I do wish I'd been here a long time. Look, they're finished. They're going. Look, Father Gibbs is bringing one of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? Oh, Mother Gibbs, I never realized how troubled and how in the dark life persons are. I loved him so. From morning until night, that's all they are, troubled.
Little cooler than it was. The rain's cooled it off a little. Those northeast winds always do the same thing, don't they? If it isn't rain, it's a 3-day blow.
But Mother Gibbs, one can go back again into the living. I feel it. I know it. Oh, just then for a moment I was thinking about the farm. Just for a moment I was there. And my baby was in my lap plain as day.
Of course, Emily.
I can go back and live those days again. Why not?
All I can say, Emily, is don't.
But it's true, isn't it?
Don't do it, Emily.
Emily, don't. It isn't what you think it would be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day that I first knew I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You don't just live it. You watch yourself living it. And as you do, you see the thing that they, down there, never saw. You see the future. You know how things are going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
Emily, that isn't the only reason why you shouldn't do it. When you've been here longer, you'll see that our life here is to forget all that, to think only of what's ahead and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
But Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Emily, it isn't wise. Really, it isn't.
But it's something I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day
No.
anyway.
At least choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day in your life. It will be important enough.
Then it can't be since I was married or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday at least, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899. A Tuesday. Do you want any specific time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
All right. We'll begin at dawn. You remember, it had been snowing for several days, but it had stopped the night before, and they'd begun clearing the roads. The sun's coming up.
Look, there's Main Street. And there's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And the livery stable.
Yes. It's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
This is the town I knew as a little girl. And there's the old white fence. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. I loved it so. Are they inside?
Yes. Your mother will be coming downstairs soon to make breakfast.
We'll see.
And you remember, your father had been out of town. He'd come back in the early morning train.
No.
He was down to New York to make a speech at Clinton.
Look, there's Howie Newsom. And there's the policeman, but he's dead. He died.
Whoa there, Leslie. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Hal. You're up early. Saved a party down near Polish Town bar. Got drunk and laid on the snowdrift. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
Why, there's Joe Kroll.
Morning, Hal. Morning, Mr. Warren. Children, time to get up.
Mama, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I never knew she were ever that young.
You can come get dressed for the fire, but hurry. Morning, Mr. Newsom. It's cold.
Oh, yes. 10 below up by my barn.
Think of it. Keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear. I laid it out for you special in your dresser. If it were a snake, it would have bite you.
Yes. Yes.
Morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early.
Yes, just been back from my old college. Been in any trouble here?
Nope. Just saved a Polish fella up north. Darn near froze to death he was.
We must get it in the paper.
Want much.
Papa.
Morning, Mother.
How'd it go, Charles?
Well, you know, I told him a few things. Been in any trouble around here?
No, can't think of anything special. Hal Newsom said it's 10 below at his barn.
Colder than that out of Hamilton College. Students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
No, none that I've noticed. The coffee's here when you're ready. And, Charles, you did remember today's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her anything?
Yes, I got something. Where is my girl? Where is my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children. 7 o'clock. Now I don't want to call you again.
Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all. Everything. I can't look at everything hard enough. Good morning, Mama.
Why, happy birthday, my dear, and many happy returns. There's some special gifts for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have.
Birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. Keep you warm on a cold day. And I want you to grow to be a big, strong girl. the blue ribbon is something from your Aunt Carrie. And I can guess who got you the postcard album. George Gibbs. Must have came to Cole pretty early. Quite nice of him.
Oh, George. I'd forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. It'll keep you warm on a cold day.
Mama, look at me. As though you really saw me. 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. Mama, you're grandmother. I married George Gibbs. Mama, Wally's dead too. His appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We felt just terrible about it, don't you remember? But just for a moment, we're together. Just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
There, in the yellow, is something found in the attic along with your grandmother's things. You're old enough now. Thought you like it.
And this is from you. Oh, Mama, it's just lovely. It's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Well, I hoped you like it. Your Aunt Carrie couldn't find one in Concord, so I traveled all the way to Boston. Your brother has something for you, too. He made it in the annual training class, and he's very proud of it, so I want you to make a big fuss. Your father has something for you, too. I don't know what it is myself, but shh, here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It moves too fast. We don't have time to look at one another. So all that was going on, and we never noticed. Take me back. Up the hill to my grave. But first, just one more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama, Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking. Mama, sunflowers. Goodbye to food. And coffee. And new iron dresses. And hot baths. Goodbye to sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute?
No. The saints and the poets, maybe. They do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Were you happy?
No. Mother Gibbs, I should have listened to you. That's all people are. Just blind.
Look, it's clearing up. Stars will be out soon.
Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes, now you know. Now you know. That's what it was like to be alive. To go about in a cloud of ignorance. To go up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you. To live as though you had 1,000,000 years. Yes. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimson, that ain't the whole truth, and you know it. Emily, look at that star. Oh, I forget its name.
My boy Joel was a sailor. Knew 'em all. He sat out on the porch evenings and tell 'em all by name. Yes, sir, it was wonderful.
A star's mighty good company.
Yes, yes 'tis.
Here's one's coming.
It ta'n't one time for them to be here. My goodness.
Mother Gibbs.
Just rest yourself.
It's George.
And my boy Joel, who knew the stars, he used to say it took millions of years for that speck of light to get to the earth. Don't seem like a body could believe it, but that's what he used to say. Millions of years.
Goodness gracious, that ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Gibbs?
Yes, Emily?
They don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everyone's asleep in Grover's Corners. No. Shorty Hawkins, down in the depot, just watched the Albany train go by. And somebody's setting up late in the livery stable and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars doing their old crisscross journey in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think there are no living beings up there. Just chalk or fire. But this one's straining away all the time to make something of itself. The strain's so bad, every 16 hours, everyone lies down, gets a rest. 11 o'clock at Grover's Corners. You should all get some rest too. Good night.
And you know the sun's setting fast, and just like they say, nothing good ever lasts. Well, go on now and kiss it goodbye, but hold on to your lover, 'cause your heart's bound to die. Go on now and say goodbye to our town, to our town. Can't you see the sun setting down on our town, on our town? Good night. Up the street beside the red neon light, that's where I met my baby on one hot summer night. He was the tender and I ordered a beer. It's been 40 years and I'm still sitting here. But you know the sun's setting fast, and just like they say, nothing good ever lasts. Well, go on now and kiss it goodbye, but hold on to your lover, 'cause your heart's bound to die. Go on now and say goodbye to our town, to our town. Can't you see the sun setting down on our town, on our town? Good night. It's here I had my babies and I had my first kiss.